After just a few weeks in Australia, Mr. Depp has a finger injury, no doubt about that. He comes home. He gets what they call a soft cast on it, which you heard his treating physician and our experts say doesn't have sides on it, but it's a hard plaster cast over the top of his finger.
Don't go the
It can be wielded like a club. And they got in an argument when Miss Heard discovered that he was having an affair with a woman named Rochelle that had been going on before the wedding, after the wedding, and she confronted him about that. No surprise there, they got in a huge argument.
No.
At some point in the argument, he bolted up the stairs. Now, Travis McGivern claims that she threw a Red Bull can at him. She and Whitney Enriquez say that absolutely didn't happen. But even if you believe...
Welcome, folks. I am Javi Kawai, joined by Shara Kirk.
They were still doing direct, and there's a couple of clips that are just gold. This is one of them. We are seeing a significant cluster of deception right there in the beginning. Now, I explain what this means in every video because I feel it's very important. A cluster of deception is multiple indications of deception that happen at the same time and are different from the person's baseline. So if I say something now and you think to yourself, oh, I do that all the time when I'm being honest, if you do it all the time, it doesn't matter. And if it happens alone without any other indications, it doesn't matter. There is this single gesture that we all do when we're lying, so we have to see multiple at the same time to raise the probability that there's some deception happening. Okay. Now, this particular cluster happens when she's talking about a skin condition where her skin reacts to the sun in a bad way. First and foremost, it's very rare for someone who has any condition to tell you that they have a condition without naming that condition. So it's much more likely that you would hear someone say, I have eczema, or I have whatever the condition is, especially because she's on the stand and she's shown us that she could be very specific about things. We see in just a few seconds how she's going to be super specific with the color wheel of the makeup palette. We see how specific she has been with carpets and drinks and all kinds of events. This is a strange place to not be specific and say, here's the condition that I have. She then mutters the next sentence out of her mouth. She says, reacts to the sun in a bad way. She drops her tone and she kind of says it really fast. And this is something we do when we're not very confident in what we're saying and we just kind of want to get it out of the way. At the same time, we see a lot of eye flutters. This is where the eyes open and close like this very rapidly. Now, she's weird with eye flutters. She'll often go a very long time without doing any, and then in a small patch, she'll do a whole time, and this is a great example. When we flutter our eyes, it's typically because we're trying to process information, and the brain is slowing down, which happens in deception. We also see a slow blink as she closes her eyes as she's saying that, and her eyebrows kind of go down a little like this, consistent with anger. Now, slow blinks also happen in deception for two reasons. One, we don't want to face the reaction of the people that we're lying to, and second, we just don't want to face this thing that we're saying because we know it's not true. Now, again, keep in mind, some people slow blink when they're focusing on something, trying to remember something, so if it's alone, it's meaningless. But here, it's not alone at all. Immediately after the statement, we see her biting her lips really hard, and we see that upper lip going inwards with tightness there. Both of these things are consistent with trying to limit what we're saying, and it's often seen in deception. Remember, any tightness in the lips, whether it's contracted, retracted, or biting, is like, I don't want to be saying this. And finally, as she's saying it, she's doing a very classic Amber Heard thing, as her head is going back and forth like this, and it's almost really consistent with what she's saying. It's like, yeah, no, I don't have a skin condition. So I'm having a hard time with that statement. I'm wondering why she didn't tell us what the skin condition is, why she's being vague about something in a sea of being very specific about other things.
If you haven't seen his other video, he is rushing through a lot of the perfunctory descriptions that he has to get out, but he really dives into it even deeper in the other video that we mentioned earlier. I do recommend checking that out when you can.
The reason I believe she's saying this is consistent with something I said in my last analysis of her, which is that as part of her baseline, she likes to gain sympathy and pity from people. So I feel like this is something she's saying, like, I have a skin condition, I'm sensitive to the sun, feel sorry for me, as she's going towards a story where she's going to be needing sympathy. And we see something really interesting when she says, no woman wants to walk out with a bruise on their face. First of all, interesting choice of words. I don't think any man wants to walk out with a bruise on their face either, but she does this a lot when she reminds the jury that she's a woman, maybe to gain more sympathy, but the body language here is spectacular. We see her two shoulders slowly go up. This isn't a fast thing, as she tilts her head and looks at them. This is a classic display of innocence. We're exposing our neck like we're vulnerable. We're bringing the shoulders up. In fact, we see this a lot in cartoons when a character is trying to show innocence, or like they didn't do something, or they're trying to gain sympathy. Then as she introduces the makeup palette, she says, bruise kit, not a bruise kit. So her tone goes up as she perks up. Notice that eye flutter again, and she's really trying to correct herself on that and not call it a bruise kit. And there's a very good reason for that, and it's due to what she does for a living. As a lot of my subscribers know, I've spent a lot of time on television and stages all over the world, and Amber is a professional actress, and on stage, on television, a bruise kit is not a kit that hides a bruise. A bruise kit is a makeup kit that allows you to fake a bruise. So the moment she called it that, she instantly corrected herself and said, I call it a bruise kit. It's different than what a bruise kit actually is. That's just what I call this one, which I use to cover bruises. And instantly, her eyes shoot to Elaine. There isn't a pause, nothing. She just goes right to her own attorney, Elaine, and it's almost like, please help. We gotta move. We gotta keep moving away from this.
Oh, right. Yeah. She did do that.
When she called it a bruise kit and we were reviewing that particular part of her testimony, I thought that maybe she was calling it a bruise kit because she had to cover up bruises so often. It was a dumb, far-fetched idea that, as I was saying it, I thought was kind of silly. It's kind of obvious, I suppose. I didn't know they have something in theater called a bruise kit that you can actually get.
I bought one for our short film.
Next thing I found fascinating is her use of the word obviously, which she says twice in that clip. The first one is obviously with foundation first, and the second is obviously not this exact one. Now, obviously is a literary term that we use to preface a statement that we think everybody would instantly know. So like, obviously I'm sitting down now. Yeah, I obviously everybody would agree to that. In both of these cases, I'm not so sure that this is something that's that obvious. You know, obviously you put foundation first. Does everyone know that? Is that like a known fact that nobody would contest? And second, obviously not this exact one. Well, how do we know it's not that exact one or the exact same version as that one? We don't have any way to know that. I believe she's using obviously here as a way to express how knowledgeable she is about makeup. And we see that in the way that she shifts to a tone of lecturing here. She's giving all these details, and obviously this, and obviously that, and sometimes come with 3, but some come with 4, or even more, and it's almost like an infomercial at some point for makeup. And I believe the reason she's doing this is to make herself seem like the makeup expert of that room. Like nothing she says about makeup and covering up bruises can be contested because she knows more about this than anyone. These things are obvious to her. And I think this is all part of her plan so that later when the other attorneys question her about covering things up with makeup, well, they're not the experts, she's the expert.
I was begging Johnny to not make me prove what I've had to sit on the stand in front of all of you and prove and talk about. I was begging not to do this, not to sit where I'm sitting today. I didn't want this. I don't want to be here. I didn't want to be there then.